hey, do I want to make an investment in it? Or do I want to send someone to jail on it? Can I submit my audit reports using this? Then your whole entire mental model shifts, right? I can't just use this almost free API anymore. And I think that's when people realize that, hey, they have to work with someone like us.
Before we dive into the show, I want to share a bit about Altitude. Altitude is a global business account built on stablecoins, but fully connected to traditional fiat workflows. You get local banking details, international transfers, corporate cards, and free on and off ramps. For CFOs, stablecoins made payments faster, but slowed down everything else. Altitude changes this with invoicing, bill pay, 5% APY, and accounting integrations, all tied to your stablecoin treasury. I first met the team behind Altitude in 2021, and they were working on their first product, Squads Multisig. Fast forward to today, and Squads has become the default multisig on Solana, securing over $15 billion of value for over 450 teams. The team has brought the same level of rigor and thoughtfulness to Altitude, and I encourage all listeners to check it out. You can learn more in our show description below. Ethan, thank you for coming on the show. And
For having me.
I guess to kick right off, you got engaged a few weeks ago. You posted about it. Congrats, first of all. And
Thank you. Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about what that was like?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I'm sure you know, quite a few of us in this industry went to DevConnect in Argentina, and right after that was Thanksgiving. And so of course I took the opportunity to go to Patagonia, brought my now fiance over there. I think we posted. I posted it on Twitter or LinkedIn. I think the photo looks pretty freaking awesome. But I think people don't know that it was completely winged, completely off the cuff. I asked a random stranger 10 seconds before the photo to hey, can you help me take a picture? And then I said, I'm gonna propose, right? And then before I know it, it's we went into this rock, and then I just kneeled down, and it was a nice Patagonia landscape in the background. So super happy, super happy that she said yes, of course. And Sam, so that's her name, and I'm very happy, truly happy.
Was it one of those sort of hikes that was strenuous to get to, and you were relieved to get to the thing, or was it sort of an easy?
It was a 15-mile hike, a 16-mile hike. Yeah, so it was exhausting. The last kilometer or mile was brutal. She was ahead of me. It was tiring.
Did you train for it? Did you force your partner to train?
No, she's actually fitter than me. Okay. But she hates getting dragged up, things like that. But it was good. It was very fun. I exercised a fair bit, right? Strong believer in zone 2 running. I think it's that's what a lot of people do to kind of increase your aerobic capacity. So I've been doing that for a couple of years now.
Nice. Yeah. And is that mostly just a health thing? Do you find that it helps you with your sort of your day-to-day in terms of working on a company that's stressful?
Yeah. So maybe jumping a little bit ahead, the first couple of years at Allium, we were doing more I would say zone 4, zone 5, so for people in the audience, the different, it's zones 1 to 5, right? Zone 1 is just normal right now. Zone 2, it's conversation that you're running, you can jog, but at conversational pace. And in zone 3, 4, and zone 5, you're just sprinting mad, right? So I think the first couple of years at Allium was more zone 4, 5, nonstop, 24/7. I think now it's still pretty intense. But ever since learning about zone 2 training, I keep thinking about when you're building a company, what does the zone 2 and zone 3 look like? Because it's kind of cliche right now, but they always say building a company, it's a marathon and not a sprint, right? So you could sprint and get exhausted. I mean, you see a lot of teams burn out. But if you kind of maintain that perfect threshold, how do you maintain that zone 2, maybe zone 3-ish range indefinitely? And I think that kind of embodies what I care about, being consistent, everybody in the team being consistent, and the biggest benefit for training in zone 2 consistently is that your zone 2 threshold keeps increasing day by day. So even though you're still at quote unquote zone 2, but you're always improving every day. So it's not your capacity is fixed.
Do you want to just give a quick sort of overview of what Allium does? Obviously, it's in the data space, and this is your whole background. But maybe just for listeners who maybe some of them are users, some of them are customers, but Do you want to just give a quick overview?
So I'm the co-founder and CEO of Allium, right? And what we do at Allium is it's quite simple. We take in all the blockchain data across, I think today, 140 plus blockchains today. We clean the data, standardize it, normalize it. To do what, right? And so the first one is to help people understand what's happening, right? So help people, be it building dashboards, building insights. And then the second piece is help different teams operationalize the data. So what does operationalize mean? So let's say you're in a finance team, you need to submit an audit report for all your on-chain balances. Well, that's operationalize it. You want to monitor, like, you're a stablecoin issuer, you want to monitor the circulating supply in near real time, right? That's what we mean by operationalizing your workflow. And what do you need for that? You need data. And then the third piece, it's productizing your application, right? So we support a lot of different apps, right? Like Phantom and a couple other big ones. And every time you need to show my balance, show my portfolio history, right? You need to you have to query the blockchain to understand what's happening. And again, that's where Allium is that data layer above the blockchain. And the reason why a company like Allium exists is because reading data from the blockchain is very challenging. So most of blockchains are just optimized for writing data to the blockchain and not reading data from the blockchain. So because of that, like it's a scale problem. It's very messy. You have to always backfill different data sets. Standards always change. Protocols always change. And we come in to clean up the chaos and make it easy for teams to use. And like I said, understand what's happening, operationalize those insights, and productize their applications.
Crypto data, I mean, as a category, has been around since pretty early on. Like blockchains have been around for 15 years now. Like since the beginning of sort of folks building companies in crypto, there's been this need for data. You guys are actually a bit of I think it's fair to say, like, newer entrant. Like, you guys got started in 21, 22. There were a few companies before you guys. But you guys have actually had a bit of success, sort of maybe beating some of those guys. What do you think's been a primary reason or two that you think sort of you can point to for that?
It's kind of funny you say that, because for 4 years, so I think everybody likes to say, hey Allium, hey Ethan, like, blockchain data is public. There are already like these companies doing it, isn't it? Like, it's like I can do it as well. I think one of the key things that I've always focused on at the beginning, of Allium. So I spent about 6 months validating this market before even raising a single dollar of VC investors' money, and I think like the key insight that I had was like I think there was a big gap in the professional enterprise part of the space, right? And that's where we've always focused on. And what does enterprise professional aspect of the data infrastructure means is, number one, like a lot of these institutions, my fundamental belief is that for this whole entire blockchain crypto space, depending where you come, even like decentralized distributed ledger technology, DLT, like what have you, a crypto Web3, you need trust and transparency, right? And right now, a lot of the institutions, the regulators like working in this space, they don't, a lot of them are flying blind. And so for me, the gap that I identified very early on was that, like, if you provide the trust and transparency and the accountability to the data for these institutions, they will bring the next billion people into the space, and then everybody wins, right? So for me, like, that was that missing piece there. And so and what does that mean in practice for Allium? That means that it's doing the basic things consistently, indefinitely. Like that's kind of what Allium is about, right? Because no one wants their data provider to pivot. No one wants their data provider to go down. No one wants their data provider to not already anticipated what's going to happen in this industry, right? So you kind of have to be that unified platform, one-stop shop for a lot of these different use cases on the data piece. And again, a lot of it was just it's just consistency. It's easier said than done, right? It's like how do you lose weight, exercise a lot, and eat healthy? How many people can adhere to that? It's hard, but everybody knows that advice as well.
I want to maybe zoom back to sort of your background, your sort of childhood, because I think that helps inform, like, hey, how's Allium being built today? So yeah, would love to learn a little bit
Yeah.
more about that.
So, well, I don't know how far back you can go. You want to go?
Maybe start with like sort of where you grew up.
Okay, yeah.
What your family
Yeah.
did.
So I grew up in I'm born and raised in Singapore. I went through the Singaporean education system. I'm sure, I think some people in the audience may know I went to ACSI and one of the high schools in Singapore, and I would say that throughout my time in Singapore, I always knew I wanted to build my own company one day. I think that's always it. My parents did it. My grandparents did it as well. More in like manufacturing space. And so for me, that was always something I knew I wanted to do. And I also always knew I was more on the technical side. Always was going to do engineering. I did study physics in high school. Did a lot of or like mathy, physics, chem math type of work. Then after high school, for everybody in the audience, I'm sure you know that if you have any Singaporean friends, they have to serve in the military, right? So I had to serve 2 years in the military. So I think when I was 18, if you ask me, oh, should I, do I want to go to university or serve in the military? I think anybody would say, no, I don't want to do it, right? Like I'm going to quote unquote, I get 2 years of income wasted. I'm going to be 2 years behind, and all that baggage or not baggage, you're behind, right? Like, especially if you're ambitious and, but I'm super thankful that I went through those 2 years in the military. And, because if you ask me today again, if I were to spend the 2 years again to do it, I would say 100%, right? And I think for Singapore it's also different. It's not just you're 2 years behind, you're actually almost 3 years behind because of how the academic cycles link up. So, but I think it was the 2 years I had was one of the most rewarding. So in those 2 years I trained to become an armor infantry officer. Back there I was in a platoon commander for three they call infantry fighting vehicles. You can call it tanks if you want to make it a little simple. If for any of the military geeks out there, it's the Singapore equivalent of the Bradley vehicle that is used by the Americans, and it's also like the unsung hero in the Ukraine-Russia war right now, right? So it's
like armored personal carriers, APCs.
Yeah, APCs, but with tracks. And so the interesting thing about being an armored infantry officer is that you not only have to be in charge of the 3 tanks or APCs or IFVs, but you also have to be in charge of a platoon of 30 men because you have troopers at the back as well, right? So, so you needed to be both very dynamic on what any armor faction would say. You need to be very fast, very swift, very decisive. But on the other hand, you also have to be on the ground, like an infantry platoon commander, and just getting to an objective, physically on your foot, right, on your feet, right? And just walking to your objective. So for me, I learned. Imagine this: at 19 or 20 years old, you are in charge of multi-millions of dollars of equipment, 30 people's lives, trained to become an officer. To me, that's the most invaluable experience you can have at 19 or 20 years old, right? And I think a couple of the lessons that stuck with me, right? Number one is that everybody that worked hard in the military didn't do it for money, right? So there's a lot of deeper motivations of why people work, why people do what they do, not because of some economic incentive out there, right? So then you realize more about human nature. You also understand more about leadership, about how you lead by example, right? There's a saying that if you're an officer, you have to do everything that everybody else can do because apparently there was some studies done that
it's leading from the front.
Always lead from the front, right? Because in wartime, right, if the officer doesn't go up and charge, no one does it because no one wants to be the first person. So the officer always has to go in front. It's just part of it's because that's part of the philosophy for a lot of the leadership. And even if any person in your platoon gets punished for some reason, normally the officer gets punished 7 times more.
Wait, so what does that look like in practice?
I think the sergeants get punished 3 times more, officers get punished 7 times more. For example, we made one of the mistakes, let's say you're in charge of signing out the rifles or the arms squad and then you miscounted one, you miss your inventory. So you miss one, that's a huge no-no. Maybe the trooper will get 1 day of his weekend, his off time taken out, but the officer gets seven weekends out. Right. So there's a lot of accountability built into that system. Right. So So I think you grew up with a very different mindset on like how to build organizations and teams. And and I think I carried through a lot of those lessons with me from the military. And of course, I went. I finished the military almost 21 years old. Moved to the U.S. Studied mechanical engineering at Illinois, undergrad first, right? And it's kind of funny because like imagine like Illinois is known as this like like party school, and then you come in at 21 years old, you can already buy drinks, like because like it's one of those things that it's like I think you come to college with a very different maturity and set in perspective on the world, right? Like, fine, you may be like 3 years behind. Like I see all these 17-year-old. I think in the US you can graduate at
it's like 17.
17.
Sometimes 18.
Yeah, which is insane because like in Singapore it follows a very like more structured approach. Like you can't graduate early. It's just not possible, right? No matter how smart you are, you have to graduate at a certain age. Like everybody has this. And so for me, like, I was like, oh, well, these 17-year-olds like already know so much about computer science, coding, and all that. I was like, oh, wow, this is the real world that I have not encountered before. And I learned a lot. I mean, like for me, it's like you have that focus that's where I started to come across computer science and just ran away with it.
Your family had a background in hardware. You went into the military, and then you went to sort of University of Illinois for engineering, which is one of the top CS schools, I'd say, in the US. Sort of, that was maybe very different from like hardware from being in the military. Was that something like very intentional? You knew early on, like you wanted to do
completely
CS?
Knew. So like for me, like I came in my first semester, and this is like more than 14 years ago. And I came in, I was just like, wow, computer science is a thing. I mean, everybody knows of computer science as like IT back then. And, like, oh, you're doing IT. Oh, fix the computer, fix the fax, fix the Wi-Fi network, right? Like, but like you didn't know there was stuff of like creating applications, creating, like all this infrastructure like that I just only knew about when my first semester in undergrad. No, actually, yeah, first semester. I knew about it. I didn't even take the class, and I think I only took the class in my second semester, because only my first semester I was like, oh, like this computer science thing is pretty cool.
You eventually found your way into Silicon Valley, into tech, working at an AI company. Sort of, what was that like?
Oh yeah, forgot to mention, I think around the same time I just moved to the US, either just before or just after. That was when Sir Isaac Walterson released a biography, Steve Jobs, right? So I think he released that around that year. I think it was 2010, 2011. I forgot when it was, 2012. And it was around that time when I, like the saying, "Go West, young men," right? Like that. And then like I think it gave me a really huge insight about what creating products is. And back then I was a huge Apple fan, still am today. And I still remember for my 18th birthday, I got the first ever iPad. The iPad 1.0. Actually, I went back to my home like a couple months ago in Singapore, and I still have it. It's completely degraded from the moisture in Singapore, but like I still have that iPad. I don't think it's working anymore. But
yeah, you need like the old charger, which
the old charger
don't even sell.
Yeah. It's not called.
You can like
Lightning.
find bootleg versions of it on Amazon.
Yeah,
I know I have like an old one also.
Yeah, the first iPad. So for me, that was like, it left an impression that it's like, hey, these like tech, what is tech products are cool. This was before, I think this was like still the beginning of like Facebook hasn't even IPO'd yet, right? So I think tech was still like I would say like finance and like consulting, and like it was still the blue chips. Yeah, that was kind of fun as well.
Before you started Allium, the last company you worked at was an AI company, I believe, called Primer.
Yes,
if that's right.
Primer. Yeah.
And like, walk me through sort of, you're at Primer for a few years and you see crypto, like what gives you the conviction or the idea to build a company there? Because like looking back at this in 2025, almost 26, it's pretty unconventional, right? To have someone that has spent time in AI actually choosing to work in crypto. Like right now we're seeing a lot of maybe folks choose AI over everything else. Yeah. So you actually have quite a unique perspective.
When I graduated from Stanford, I went into AI. I always knew I was going to go into AI. So I took the first deep learning class by Andre Kripathi at Stanford. Yeah. So just to give you,
Was the Transformers paper out by this
no, it
point or
still
not
was not
yet?
out
Okay.
yet. Yeah. And Transformers paper wasn't very good. Anyway, sorry. I mean, it wasn't production ready by any means, anytime, even when it was launched. And so I know like that entire space pretty well. I started with like, convolutional neural networks, went to recurrent neural networks, went to LSTMs, and then Transformers kind of like made a cleaner architecture on that. And I actually at grad school I did reinforcement learning as well, right? So I did a lot of like decision making under uncertainty, which is making a comeback again recently, RL. And I always wanted to be at the intersection of product and engineering because that's why I joined Primer, the startup. And so what Primer does, it was in many ways it was many ways it was maybe a bit too ahead of its time, right? So for those in the audience, what Primer did was that we were one of at least we positioned ourselves as like the top NLP company, which stands for natural language processing. So we ingested all the unstructured data, right? So like news data, Telegram data, and Twitter data, right? So all that structured, clustered, similar words together, tweets together, sentiment analysis, of course, and find patterns and trends, and we sold it to like big institutions, right, who needed to like monitor the world. And so for me, like I spent about 4.5 years at Primer AI, and it was an eye-opening experience because I got to see, and so I was one of the earlier machine learning engineers in the company, and so I had a lot of chance to build out the first production systems for like retrieving, like how do you semantically retrieve data, right? Like how do you like do, this is before RAG was a thing. I think we probably built RAG and we didn't have the foresight to call it RAG and write a blog post about it, but like it's like how do you merge like traditional information retrieval, and these new like neural nets, neural net embeddings, and how do you combine both of them to create a better experience for understanding the world, right? So for me, that was a lot of the underlying motivation for trying to understand the world better using algorithms at scale, and then the dirty little secret of machine learning and now AI is that 99% of your outcome is just depending on how good your data is, right? Your training data, how much data you can collect. And so the two pieces of that, how good your data is and how much data you can collect. So on the how you can collect your data piece, right? The key part there was like building a really good infrastructure, right? How do you make sure that any feedback loop, you collect that data and you can retrain your models, that whole entire loop there. Is where there were a whole bunch of machine learning ML ops companies that started during that time. And the other one, how good your data is. We had to work with many different data providers then at Primer, and it was very clear that like the data is the bottleneck to the best experience. So I mean, you asked me like why I went from AI to crypto. It was because when I saw that like the data piece was the bottleneck, and I was super passionate about search, by the way. Like you have no, like if you ask every person, almost every friend that knew me at that point in time, I told everybody I was going to start a search company.
Like a blockchain space?
No. I didn't even know crypto then.
Okay.
Yeah. So because I'm super passionate about search. I studied everything about search technologies, information retrievals, all the different startups that were like the stealth startups that were in search. Every single VC would tell you enterprise search is dead. That's Google already won. So for those in the audience, just remember all these narratives, they're probably true until a certain point, right? And I think at that point I was very inspired by what Pinterest did for search, because they just found this like niche, this vertical, and in this case was like fashion, home decor design, and it's built a really good search experience on top of images, and of course get people to tag it, right? Again, back with that feedback loop system, like actual consumers to tag it, and I think like they created this really nice niche for themselves that could still become, I forgot, $10 billion company or something like that. Something like that, yeah. Right? And so I was like, oh, I'm going to build a search company, and I'm going to build a verticalized search company because I always thought a general search company would be I thought the market was too small. I mean, now maybe not. You saw all the different semantic search companies. And because I worked a lot of Elasticsearch back then, and I thought like you can kind of put some hybrid search, like both like faceted search and also semantic search combined in a nice experience. That's what a lot of companies are doing now. That's what every database company is just slapping on their semantic search today. So yeah, search was my thing. Always wanted to build a verticalized search company. So when I left Primer, and I also always wanted to build my own company. And so when I left Primer, well, I also got my green card, so I could just leave. When I left Primer, I was just exploring which vertical should I go for, right? And this was the time in 2021 when DeFi summer happened, right? And so I mean, crypto is pretty hot. DeFi summer of 21, like DeFi was going up the roof. NFTs were a huge thing, and I was like, wow, all this data is public, right? And I was looking online. I was like, oh, like there are very few tools out there that made it easy and simple to understand what's happening. Very, very few. Like there was Etherscan, there's a couple other like a lot of random websites like. Some always has like
DeFi Pulse,
DeFi Pulse, or DeFi Pulse, yeah, like on something sniper, like something tools.xyz is so many. There are like 100 of them, and I asked myself this question: it's like, okay, if I like number one, biggest data set in the world, right? I mean, sorry, biggest public data set in the world, right? Number two, well, what this entire crypto movement represented was like, how do you basically open source the future of finance, right? Like all the primitives, right? And that to me was like, it felt like what the open source movement did for, like when Linux came to be, right? Like, so I was like, oh, I see this similar pattern, right? People just want to build things open source. And then I think Uniswap also came out around then. It was like crazy, this 19-year-old could build an exchange that traded insane amount of volumes as a 19-year-old. And I was like, like, this is pretty cool, right? Like that's what open sourcing a system means, that anybody smart in the world could contribute to it. And I think that energy drew me to the space. And then also, like I said, the most gigantic public data set there. And it was very simple to come to the conclusion that like whoever could organize that data the best would have a decent business, right? Like because and also I know from my experience that like when you build data infrastructure, you can't just build it overnight. It's not something that it's very easy for data infrastructure to get a quote unquote like a hello world like MVP working in the weekend. Oh, I hit this Ethereum client, like cool, I put it in my like Postgres instance and like, oh cool, I've done it, right? And then but it's very easy to get that V0 up and running, the MVP running. But the moment you start changing that mindset and say, hey, businesses have to rely on
enterprise grades, reliable.
Yeah. People have to rely, like whatever number I said will affect people's how they count their revenue, right? Whether or not people may potentially go to jail or not, right? Like once you realize that, then you realize that then it's a whole different way of building things. Whole different standard that you have to uphold yourself to. And around the same time, I met my co-founder. I was chatting with my co-founder, Cheng Han. I've known him since Illinois, so I forgot to mention that. So I've known him since freshman year. Known him for very, very, very long. And he was losing a lot of money in NFTs, which is why we got along together. And I was also losing a lot of money in NFTs, Axie Infinity specifically. And that was when we both decided to just work on this together. Because if you lost a lot of money in NFTs, then you realize that like you could a lot of it. Well, like the data is all public, right? At least you know why you lost it, and like it's a bit of but anyhow, like there was a huge gap, I would say, and that was when I spent about 6 months literally interviewing every person that touched data in a company I could find in this industry, and just to learn about like the different pain points and the different players in the space, and like how and where Allium was going to play, and we set out on being that more of like that more institutional grade enterprise data platform for everybody. But we work not just with institutions, we also work with very small startups today. But I think at the end of the day is that our thesis was that people would pay for quality and reliability, and that was something that we upheld ourselves to from the beginning.
So you mentioned earlier that you spent some time basically talking to a bunch of people in the industry about their data needs. How did you go about this? I know you said you were like interested in NFTs and crypto, but presumably like didn't have professional contacts, or maybe you did. Was it like friends? Did you cold message people? Like,
it's a bit of everything. I just DM'd everybody I could find. I went into this industry cold, like really cold. So I just, every time I chatted with anybody, I just said, hey, I'm new to the space, but I spent this many years in AI and data and infra. Like, just give me a data problem you have. I would try and fix it for you. If I can't fix it for you, then I'll let you know, but just let me know what problems you have, right? So it's very like neat finding, like just neat discovery, like just user discovery and just continuing that and iterating on that continually again and again and again. And it's why I recommend every single potential founder, actually anybody, to read the Mom Test, this very light book that tells you how to, when you're going through this phase, everybody wants to say something nice to you because they don't want to offend you. So it's like, how do you ask the right questions such that they don't tell you what you want to hear, right? For example, let's say you just quit your job. And let's say if I were interviewing you as a potential customer or validating a market, I'd be like, hey, Derek, I just quit my job to go into crypto. Like, I think that's the thing in data. Like, what do you think? Will you buy it? And then the first thing you'll say is like, oh yeah, of course I think I would, because you're just being nice to me because you just heard that I quit my job. And so like, if you tell me that I'm stupid, then like you will be like, you'll feel bad, right? It's like but so how do you ask the right questions and to get to that point that you think that there's conviction in building a space, to build in the space, right? And so for me, I think the pain points that I found were, number one, there were so many different fragmented data sources, right? Just, everybody is going to a different site for a different piece in crypto. Number two, a lot of these platforms were not that reliable as well, but people were okay with it. Like, somehow it's just, new industry, it's fine. Everything's kind of broken, but you know what? This dashboard is kind of stale, but
it's the best we have.
It's the best we have, and I'm happy enough, right? And the third thing was that I think it was very hard for people. I saw that like one of the trends I started seeing is that people were trying to combine the on-chain data with the off-chain data piece, right? So it's like people already had their own data sets, like private data sets, but they want to combine with like the on-chain piece. And that was also another thing that was very difficult to do. And and of course, right, like better, faster, stronger data sets. But I think as a whole, once I uncovered these pain points, and I saw in a lot of these like crypto companies, I saw a lot of them trying to rebuild this exact same thing internally.
Okay.
And I think there was a lot of resistance to work with an outsider initially for a couple of reasons. I think number one is that crypto always has this ethos of like DYOR, do your own research, right? Trust but verify, right? Like, so that's this whole ethos is like do it myself. Number two was also that honestly, if you're one of the few folks that can ingest and index data well, you're probably going to get promoted. So like, why would anyone not do it? Right? Like it's a good skill to have, right? And so I think because of those two elements, it was obviously initially hard because people just wanted to do it themselves. And also there were much less chains back then, right? Everybody was either Ethereum, Polygon, or Solana. I think those were the three top ones from a
usage standpoint
and developing app standpoint, right? And so it was pretty simple, so to speak, right?
You had a bunch of these conversations over a few months, like figure out a way to get some of the revealed preferences from people through the Mom Test. What gives you the conviction to actually settle on this idea of like, hey, I'm going to start a crypto data company now in the year, I believe, 2021?
Late 2021, early 2022. Actually, by the time it was like Q1 of 20, I think April. So I think the conviction. So I think once you validated there was a need and a market, right? I think it was convincing people that you're here to stay, right? Especially for an infrastructure company. Not only do you have to be like reliable and all that good stuff, but like whenever you want to work with big customers, you need money, right? Like if not, people say you're gonna go out of business in 2 months or 1 month, or you're gonna just leave, pack up your bags. So raising capital was always a big piece of that, right? What accelerated the capital, the investment itself, like me raising the first round was Luna and Terra crashed. So Luna and Terra crashed, and I knew that if I don't raise, I know if I don't raise now, I will never race again. I'll never be able to race again. And so that was when, so Luna and Terra crashed, and that was when exactly the exact point where I told Chung Han, my co-founder, I said, I'm going to race right now. Like there was no, if we don't race now, doesn't matter how big this problem of space is, like this, it's moot, right? So, and I think fortunately enough, that was when we had two investors, Bucky from Kleiner Perkins, who is now at Lightspeed, and David Bayer from Amplify, that decided to like lead our seed round. And so it happened pretty quick. It happened within like a week and a half after I said I need to raise a round now, right? And then we took in some angel checks, of course, during that same point in time. And that was that. Once you raise the money and you already have the market and the thesis, and actually in my seed pitch deck, I was making the case that like with an Allium, a Terra Luna should not have happened, or 3AC should not have happened, because 3AC came in June. But if you could do counterparty risk management well, right? Like check the collateral on the other on your counterparty. Like if you knew it beforehand, you would have maybe not enabled that to happen, right? Think about it. Like how many people were quantitative enough and knew crypto data well enough to even like understand what was happening in Terra Luna? Probably very few people in the world, right? And they probably profited off that collapse in some way, a shape and form, right? So I think like a lot of what this industry needed was like this like trusted partner to be able to, hey, like do all that risk management and using data to underpin a lot of risk management. And yeah, and I think the only companies doing something anywhere related to that at that point in time were like a chain analysis, but they were more focused on like AML compliance. It's like
Bank Secrecy Act.
Yeah, yeah. So more of that. So they weren't doing like, they were not going to help Terra Luna like prevent from collapsing, right?
So you raised money really out of, a big reason was the market timing. You didn't have really a product. You had in your mind enough customer validation.
Yeah, we've been building the whole way as well.
Okay.
So we've been building, when I mean validate, we not only interview people, but we also built at the same time, right? So we were already ingesting the data. We already had, actually one of the first bots that we built was, I think people will love this one. A fun fact, I didn't think anybody knows this, but our very first like Telegram bot that we built was called Degenalytics. So we still own the domain name. So like analytics, but degen. So it was like, how do you like snipe these like NFTs or like track these whales really well, right? So we were building a lot of these like, we had the infrastructure built, right? And so the Telegram bot was, I mean, like for Ethereum first only. And so the Telegram bot was really the first surface area to show like proof of work that like to our potential customers that, hey, we already have something and we're not just like writing a pitch deck, right? So I think there was a lot of that, I would say, a lot of these little things we were shipping along the way to show people chatting
constantly iterating and showing what you can do.
Yeah, what we were doing. So we really had the data, Ethereum data set. Right. We stored the whole entire thing. And so that was when we started out.
And did you have, from a customer standpoint, did you focus on like a handful of like early design partners that you really wanted? Did you cast a wide net? Maybe you could have done both, but
yeah. So the early design partners for our seed round, there are two very famous companies still doing very well today. I'm happy to say that I think both of them actually became our customers eventually. And they were internal data teams at these companies, and I think a lot of it is that they trusted my background and Chung Han's background, that we were professional engineers. So
they wanted to take a bet.
Yeah, I not take a bad deal. Like, okay, you guys seem professional, skilled,
Right.
trustworthy, and so I think that was a bit of that initial like design partners that they trusted us. Yeah, at least they trusted us to execute.
So the year's 2022. You've raised your seed round. A lot more happens. Like FTX collapses, prices go down a bunch more. You keep building throughout the winter. You eventually raise your Series A, I believe, in 2024. Like, what did that process look like? Just building through the bear market. Sounds like you continued to acquire a bunch of customers, like scale the
Yeah.
team. Just
So
walk me through what that
one of
looked
the
like.
interesting dynamics that happened during the bear market was, well, I think it was still the best time to build. It was the best time to build. I'm happy the markets have slowed down a bit because now it's getting better time to build. I personally hate bull markets. I'm only used to the price crashing and customers dying every day, right? Like since the first 3 years, 2.5 years of this
Just
company.
downhill, straight downhill.
I'm only used to down. So like to me, like I didn't even expect this. I knew that I knew it was a matter of when the industry like it was just a matter of when, but I didn't expect it to be so soon, where everything rebounded so fast and it's so like nearly vertical, in my opinion, in the past year, right? One of the interesting dynamics when as everything was like going down, was all the huge teams that these companies used to hire to index data. They would hire like many engineers and spend a lot of infrastructure costs, and not all of them know data very well. And they all got downsized, right? So it was like it makes sense, right? Because like why don't I just buy from a vendor instead? It's the same data, right? And so I think that dynamic actually helped us start like winning, getting a foot in the door, because it's like because what we do at Allium, we are a data engineering team in a company's back pocket. We already have all the data. So I can go to head of engineering and say that, look, instead of hiring 3 data engineers and paying a huge infra bill, just pay a fraction of that to us, to Allium, and all your on-chain data needs will be forever future-proofed, and we would probably already handle most of them already because we do it for everybody. And so that was that wedge that we had to a lot of these teams and companies. And so because of that, people were willing to like forego that like I need to do it in-house mindset, right? And you're like, look, like this is the same data, right? You actually saw that same thing play out for the RPC sector. Initially, everybody had to run their own nodes, but it came to a certain point where they're like, no, just use an RPC provider. What are you trying to do here?
In a world where there's infinite capital for startups, they can try to do everything in-house, and then it's only when it's more competitive and resources are scarcer, they're like, we should just focus on our core competency and outsource or buy what we really should.
Yeah. So that's exactly what happened. And that was exactly why we managed to get a lot of big opportunities at these like really big teams as well, because they saw the value that we had. We had a strong team. We were very focused only on doing data, and we knew we could do it better than them and at a better price, way better price than it would cost them. Yeah.
And so you mentioned one thing, which is one of the main selling points of Allium to the customers, like, hey, they don't have this huge infra bill that they need to manage and monitor. But I'm curious what that looks like for Allium itself. Like you guys support a bunch of different chains, presumably run like a bunch of nodes.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like hardware, bare metal, whatever.
Yeah.
And you've also mentioned like you have this sort of internal leaderboard of the biggest sort of infra mistakes that.
Yeah. It keeps me up at night every single day. So I would say that like pound for pound, we probably have one of the biggest infrastructure builds in this company, in this industry, I would say. So we have to give you a sense of the scale, right? Like I think compressed data sets for 100 plus chains, it's going to be 4 to 5 petabytes, right? Of data, which maybe sounds not that much if you have unstructured data like videos and like compared to the unstructured. But if you need to randomly access any row at any given point in time, that's why it's challenging. So imagine you have to find a specific wallet historical balance at this point in time for this one chain. And so then everything needs to be readily accessible. You can't just like put it in archival storage. and that's why it's like really. I think anybody here on the show can do the math of like how much 1 GB costs per month, right? It's $20 per gigabyte per month, for S3 storage. But we also have to store the data onto more expensive real-time storage for our to power applications, like Phantom, and so that storage is usually one order of magnitude more expensive per unit. And also now we need the data replicated across many different regions, many different cloud providers, right? So we have our stack on like Google, Amazon, Snowflake, Databricks, ClickHouse, right? So we have our data copied everywhere across every region, right? So you do business in Europe, you actually have to copy all the data over to Europe as well. So not only that, multiply it by number of regions you need your data, US East, US West, US East 1, US East 2. So then you realize your bills really just go up, and then more usage equals more, right? And that was why, that's why I said it keeps me up at night. In terms of the infrastructure bill spend, like that leaderboard, like it was, our first 2 years was like so many mistakes. In fact, actually, a lot of customers also made similar mistakes, but sometimes it'd be too sheepish to tell us as well, because like, imagine you do a select star query. I think it went viral earlier this year on Solana data. If you do it on a BigQuery instance, you get charged like, I don't know, like $5,000. I don't know, something insane if you don't know what you're doing. If you backfill it wrongly, it's another. If you backfill anything wrongly, you redo it again. That's like $10,000-$20,000. Most expensive mistake was a storage lifecycle policy mistake. So that wasn't even like a wrong query. It was a wrong. We clicked the wrong configuration. We clicked it, and then imagine selecting a wrong like a storage policy, and that costs us $105K. It was a single click that caused that mistake.
Can you get like a refund on this kind of stuff, or are these providers just like not helpful?
Because then they use that to like obviously re-sign your deal and like lock it. Like it's
enterprise sales.
It's enterprise sales, right? So, but then on the other hand, like if our customers make those mistakes on our platform, we have to be more forgiving, because again, like I don't think at this point a lot of crypto data folks, they don't know how much cost goes behind the hood, right? And yeah, I think we did it as a way to celebrate, like kind of like, look, we're gonna make mistakes here. We make these mistakes so that our customers don't have to make those mistakes, right? And that's why like Allium exists as a company, and I see a lot of this as a fixed cost in the long run, right?
Because it builds up that sort of muscle, that internal sort of memory and skill set of like, hey, how do we actually do this at scale? And whereas someone doing it from scratch today, they may repeat a lot of these mistakes. It may require a bunch more money, time to learn those same things.
Exactly that, and that is why. And I think we approach this scale where I find it's hard to believe that someone would want to do it themselves in-house. Again, it's hard to believe that. I think because it's just at this scale that like you need to put in a lot of money, a lot of expertise, and I just don't think it's very viable. Like
I guess for an exchange like Coinbase or Kraken or pick a large crypto company that's public, like I don't know what their internal data setup is, but I would imagine they do have the resources to try something like this. Like, do you work with companies like that as well?
So for example, like I think Coinbase has a very huge data team, right? I think they probably have their own data ingestion system. I know one of the folks that built it up as well. But I think despite that, right, not like Coinbase is still a customer, right? And so one of the teams that we work with, right, is the base team. And so in this case, right, like even if Coinbase has the resources to like ingest all your base data really well, where we also shine is that not only do we have all the base data, but we have the other 139 chains worth of data, and all the bridges already all parsed out, right? So now, like if they want to understand like the flows between different chains, right, how activity is moving, how funds are flowing, that's where on the analytics use case, it doesn't make sense for them to build out a huge team just to answer a simple question, right? Like, where are my users coming from? Where are they going to? Where else are they spending money, right? And to spend the millions and tens of millions of dollars of infra and talent together just to like answer a simple question like that. No matter how rich you are as a centralized exchange, that GM of that org will never be able to get that approved, right? For the P&L perspective, right? So I think that's why we still have that opportunity to work with a lot. I'm sure there's a lot of the core trading stuff, they would definitely keep it in-house, but I think there's a lot of other use cases that they would just work with someone like Allium.
And obviously a big part of Allium's business is like sort of working with teams who want to understand a question or how fund flows are moving, like the base example. You're also building for research analysts that want to sort of understand macro trends and like stablecoin growth with someone like a Visa. A few weeks ago, you also helped, I believe, Paradigm put out that piece on polymarket volumes. I guess just what does that look like? Do these teams typically come to you with like, hey, we have a like clear idea of our thesis and we just need the evidence? Is it, hey, we want to better understand this hypothesis or area in general? I'm sure there's like a spectrum, but I almost think of sort of Allium data engineers kind of, I don't know if you do, as like forward deployed sort of engineers that can in some cases help these teams sort of in a very hands-on and responsive way. Maybe not all cases, but just curious.
Let me put it this way. I think like we have a commitment to be accountable to our data quality and data completeness. And so whenever, so a lot of the folks you mentioned, they are customers. So whenever they have a question and our data can't answer it today, I think it is our responsibility to make sure that like we figure out why there's a discrepancy, why there's a gap, right? And it makes us better, right? And so I always believe in inserting myself or engineers in the event loop of a customer, right? And so I think what the industry, outside of crypto calls it is forward deployed engineers, right? But at the end of the day, like I see it as like you just have to insert yourself into the event loop of a customer and their critical flow. And if you do that, then you can get a better product. I see it more as like building a better product, right? Because if we fix this double counting issue, right, that you mentioned, like, or we're counting it wrongly, then we fix it, but we fix it for the other, I don't know, like hundreds of customers using us today, right, in production. So I think it just benefits everybody. Yeah.
I've seen a little bit of sort of these group chats you have with all these different customers where you'll have, the customer will be in there. There will be like you and a bunch of engineers in the group as well. And you have like a team of folks in Singapore, you have folks in US. So it's like around the clock. If the customer has questions, like someone sort of awake can sort of jump in and just like be like, it's like a very specific, detailed like data question that like I have no idea what that even means.
And I think because like people don't understand the devil is in the details for data, especially. And so, and that's one of those things that which is why I don't even say that we have the best data. I just say that we are the most accountable to our data, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what people buy us for, like work with us, is because they know that I will ultimately apologize if, like, hey, this thing is wrong or this thing is off, right? And I mean, it takes a lot of effort, but I think in the long run, I think as a data provider, your reputation is number one. And I think that we always strive to be better every single day. And it's super, super nuanced. Like a lot of these data pieces, it's hard to like let people know, like everything that you see out, every number, every dashboard. A lot of people take things at superficial level, but I think if you get to the level of detail that you can, hey, do I want to make an investment in it? Or do I want to send someone to jail on it? Can I submit my audit reports using this? Then your whole entire mental model shifts, right? I can't just use this free API, that almost free API anymore. And I think that's when people realize that, hey, they have to work with someone like us. Yeah.
So it's like part of the reason for using you guys, and sound like this is an explicit part of the pitch, is like, hey, we are not just like all this data is public. Maybe other folks can clean it up as well, but we'll basically like have I don't know if it's like quantified in SLAs where it's like we are going to do this with the absolute highest quality.
That's basically it. And it's, again, and what does this mean? Going back to the beginning of our chat, it's like doing the basic things consistently, indefinitely, right? Like I think that's something that is, it's hard to adhere to, right? Because the number of times in the first 3 years of this company that people ask me, "Hey, Ethan, what's your AI? You came from AI. Why don't you launch this AI thing on top of Allium?" I go like, no. Our job is to focus here first, right? Get the strong foundation in, right? Yeah. So then and we're still, a lot of that phase is there today. We have a lot of interesting AI initiatives now this year, but I think like a lot of what got us to where we are today is that strong foundation.
Got it. Maybe, yeah, on the topic of AI initiatives, like, I don't know if it's public or not. Do you want to like share a bit more on sort of how you guys are thinking about it? You obviously come from a background. I feel like I see a lot of crypto companies that like release AI stuff. It's like kind of half baked, but you obviously have actually worked in AI for a few years.
So for us, like I mentioned, the two things that matter to the best AI outcomes are, number one, you need to have the best data. And number two, you need to have the best, you need to capture all the feedback, right? So I think those two things are going to be true, right? So by working very closely with our customers, we know what people need and what really well, like how to ask queries, how to ask questions, how to format the queries as well, the data queries, what metrics to even look at, and then on the data quality piece, right? Like you can have the best AI model, but if your data is inaccurate, no one's going to use it still, right? Because if you, let's say you have the best AI model, let's say return me the balance of this wallet, and you get it wrong, there's no in between, there's no B grade. It's literally you're either correct or wrong, right? So the data quality is number one, right? Or like how you write the query as well. So what we've been working on, we built an AI assistant on top of all the data, trained on all internal docs, external docs, request feedback. And so we actually have this full eval system where anytime a query, whatever our AI assistant outputs is not good, we feed back into it, we write prompts. Let's say even for Solana, like a lot of it is context engineering, right? And so let's say for Solana, we have this whole entire like bank of like all these like key Solana questions that you need to ask, and what are the schemas that map to it, right? So there's a lot of that context that you need to feed the model. And a lot of it is organizing all that ontology, taxonomy, right, of all these different categories. And that can only be built if you are close to all the different customers and leading teams, right? If not, and to me, building that will only improve our AI models, right? And in the future, my dream is that like people don't even have to write a query anymore. They're just like, hey, like what is this? What is that, right? So that's one piece. I'm more on the analytics side of things, on the AI piece. The other part that drives me super excited, that it's a bit early, but I think this will happen. If we all can believe that the ratio of like agents to humans would be like, I don't know, 10 to 1, 100 to 1, 1,000 to 1. Like there'll be many more agents to humans in the world in the future, right? And the next logical step is that if, and most of these agents, whenever they pay each other or pay APIs and services, will probably happen on some sort of stablecoin rails, right? Or something like that. Whether or not it's public or private, TBD, but like it will happen on some sort of rails that doesn't require like 10 cents like per transaction, right? And so stablecoins crypto is the most logical conclusion for that, like solution for that. And now you have all these like AI agents trying to like pay each other, trying to like rebalance a portfolio, or like this DeFi, if this yield goes above this, move money from A to B, and then agents will be talking to other agents. And so when that reality becomes true, to me, it's a matter of when. That's why I still say it's a bit early. All those agents need to understand the state of the world. They need to know like, if balance, then do this, or if yield, then do that. That if condition, they would need to require reading data from the blockchain. Right. And so for me, like a lot of it has been focusing on making sure that like if we had to handle like a 1 billion X scale in X years, like can we return all the balances in time, right? So there's a lot of that underlying infrastructure you have to invest today. If not, you will never meet it in like 2 years or 3 years time when it starts to like take off even more.
Yeah, I feel like one of the challenges with on-chain agents today is, can users like trust 100% that the agent's going to do things securely and sort of according to the user wishes? Like if I'm a user just transacting, I can, not everyone does this, but I can like manually check addresses, I can manually check amounts, I can manually check slippage. And you can like set a lot of these terms with agents, but at the end of the day, there's always like edge cases, there's black swan events, like there's data quality issues where even just one of these mistakes, when you're dealing with on-chain wallets, like it can result in sort of the entire balance is lost, right? So I think that is one of the hurdles. I agree. It's like, it feels like something that it's a matter of when, not if, but yeah, I think the timing is the key.
The timing is the key, right? And I think we're laying the foundation for that. And I think like having readily accessible, high quality data by billions of agents in near real time will be a huge primitive to that, right? Because they have, if you want to have more complex agents, they have to understand the state of the world, right? And they can't be making a million RPC calls as well. It's not going to work, right? I mean, yes, it could work for the basic, but once it goes beyond a certain level, there'll be abstractions on abstractions on abstractions. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you this, since you're, again, one of the few people that I think like actually have worked in AI and also now in crypto. What are your thoughts on like a lot of, there's like so many experiments at the intersection of crypto and AI. I think people feel on one end of the spectrum, people are like, a lot of this doesn't make sense. It's like AI sort of shoehorned into crypto protocols and use cases. On the other hand, it's like there are probably some real things going on. Like, where do you fall on the spectrum overall?
I am always a very pragmatic person, right? Like I mentioned Lee Kuan Yew at the beginning, very pragmatic. So I think like a lot of times, like when people write these really great theses of the world, and like I never disagree with them. It's always the only disagreement is on timeline and time horizon, and like I think predicting when is always harder than predicting what, like if something would happen, right? I mean, you take, for example, any sci-fi author, most of the stuff they wrote 40, 50, many years ago, right? Like most of them have come true, or it's a matter of time before they come true. So I think same thing for a lot of these like crypto and AI. I think there's a lot of interesting things that are happening in this space. Again, like the on-chain agent space. I think it's still very early, right? I think I know Cloudflare is like, I think Cloudflare's use case is interesting to me, the one where they want to do the paper scrape, right? Like change the whole business model of the web, right? I index the entire web. Instead of putting ads, like I can tip the website creators themselves. I think that's a very interesting model. Whether or not they can execute it to the full vision, TBD. But I think these are the net new use cases that like stablecoins and agents like allow to happen with the X402 protocol as well. Still super early days. I'm just monitoring very closely because I want it to work, right? And I know they have to solve refunds first. They haven't solved refunds yet, so that's a big thing. But I'm generally very, very positive overall. I do understand there are a lot of these like crypto AI coins out there, right? I think I used the FOMO app to buy a couple for fun. I want AI XPT or something like that.
Yeah, that's one of them. Yeah,
I think it's for fun, right? But I don't think. I mean, for me, like I know the real use cases. I think IP is also an interesting one, right? So there are a lot of these interesting trends that are happening. But what I think should be done more is that like how can you use these AI or these LLMs to just make existing workflows better, right?
Such as what you're doing now.
Yeah. So how do you make it? I think that should be universal and applied. How can I do a set and forget trading strategy even on my app, right? Like set a limit. I think there's some of these apps doing some of these things. Like I think it's a Meridian app or something. They're doing like, hey, like help me buy this at this certain price. And you just like talk to it, and then it just helps you set these simple rules out, right? I mean, it sounds simple, but I believe more in that incremental, steady progress than a like this like technology from the heavens come in and like solves everything overnight. Like I think it'll take that incremental approach. Yeah.
Curious how you stay up to date with sort of the world of AI in general, because like speaking personally, I see a lot of like the blog posts, like when ChatGPT releases a new model, I'm like, I read the post, I try it out. But at the end of the day, like it doesn't really affect my sort of day-to-day directly, which is like looking at pre-seed and seed stage crypto companies. For you, like there are some overlaps because you are now sort of integrating AI into the core product, but really you're still, all your customers are crypto companies. Like you're probably spending, I'm assuming, more time like staying up to date on crypto trends. So like how much do you care about sort of staying up to date on like the cutting edge of like AI infra or agents? And if so, how do you do that?
Yeah. For me, the way I stay up to date, so I definitely am. I would say I was probably at my peak in that knowing every little thing in AI maybe like 6 years ago, to be honest, or 5 years ago. And I could already anticipate the type of papers that would come out. Like, meaning that a lot of times it's like this architecture, you change this like little learning for like this parameter or this, like, all of it is optimization. Um, and uh, and I'm nowhere anywhere close to that. The way I keep up to date now is just asking and reading some of these like common like newsletters, like more famous general tech newsletters. I think applications of AI interest me more than the actual fundamental, because I just assume AI is going to scale according to some law, not Moore's law, but some AI law, and then there'll be some blips, but they're gonna fit a nice line across it anyway. So I am less concerned about that. I just assume it's going to progress at some rate. And yeah, so read a lot. I would try to catch up with like the State of AI report by Nathan. I always read that just to get a sense. I've been reading his report since it came out, actually, since he first started doing it. So I think, and of course, like catch up with founders. And again, like I said, I'm more interested in the applications of AI, and I think that's always super super exciting to me and how they're applying it. Because I thought a lot about applications for machine learning like 6 years ago. It's like, oh, I always thought like, oh, but ML can only probably get us to this X%. Like you see like 75% grade. The last 25% you still need a human, or you need like manual heuristics or expert domain expertise. So for me, I'm just very curious to see like whether or not like how much better has AI gotten, or how well these companies are tackling a space that I probably spent time in many years ago. I see it more as like for my own scorecard from 6 years ago to see like whether or not it tracks my mental model, and catch up with great founders, right? I go to SF almost once a month, and I try to catch up with just like people not directly in crypto, just to, I mean, a lot of my friends are still not in crypto, right? Still don't know like what I'm doing, some of them, but like I just to catch up with them and just learn about what the latest meta is and understanding that. Yeah.
So we're almost in 2026. This episode will probably be released in 26. How does the data landscape broadly compare to when you got started? I know you mentioned earlier it's more complex, there's more chains, but outside of the sheer quantity of sort of new chains, like anything else stand out, whether it's like the market or customers or customer needs?
I mean, the quantity, I like to say that like it's not just the size of the data, it's the breadth of data coverage and also the depth you need to cover. I think the surface area is always going to increase exponentially. I think the one thing that anybody in this space has to realize, that the blockchains are not a database, it's a Turing machine, which means that anybody can write anything they want, which is the underlying cause of why it's so messy, right? And I think I think we were discussing this. It's like they're always going to be like the bigger players and of small players depending on the meta coming up. You know, every 2 months there's always a new meta that comes up, and there'll be this indie person that just like does it, be the first to that, right? But in the long run, I think where we want to be is to always be that enduring data provider that has basically that one-stop shop, that everything, all the breadth, depth, and quality, of course. But for the most part, I think I think everything is going to change in a very predictable growth rate.
Another area I know you probably have a lot of thoughts on are sort of airdrops and sort of Sybils. You've been in the trenches there.
Yeah. So we helped like Jupiter, Wormhole, Cheeto with their Sybil detections for their airdrops like a year and 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, give or take at this point. I see a lot of parallels to like in the late 90s when you had websites and click farms and people were trying to like boost their numbers on these like web page links, right? And so you just write bots to like increase your page views. So I think it's very similar. And I do agree that's a cat and mouse game. And then the farmers would get more sophisticated, the defenders would get more and more heuristic. So I think it's gonna keep going back and forth. And I think it'll be some like game theoretic equilibrium where like, look, if you're like one of the top like minds at like Citadel, you wanted to do this Sybil farming on the side for fun in your weekend, and you spent like this amount of infra to farm this, and you spent this much of money and time, and you're one of the smartest people in the world, good for you, and you deserve it, right? Like it's like you deserve this farming, like this reward, right? It's almost to the extent, but the normal people, like fine, you can like reward them some bit. I think what's a more interesting question for the Sybil piece is, it's me personally, I always saw the underlying problem. I mean, the problem we're trying to solve very related to what the advertising world did in the web, right? So like, you have your cookie, your browser, right? And you can track this person across everywhere and see what they're doing and why they're doing. And so the same thing for Sybil, like you want to track this wallet address around everywhere and understand like how much they contribute to this protocol, maybe a competitor's protocol. So I see it more as like an incentive, like how do you incentivize the right people at the right time, right? How do you design the right incentives and like beyond like just like whether or not the token, there's so many other ways to incentivize different types of behavior. And I think that underlying expertise is what interests me as a data person, right? As also as a data scientist, like, hey, what does the future of on-chain advertising or marketing looks like, right? So I see it more in that lens, right? Because you're basically giving out like free stuff to get them to use more of you, right? Which is a form of advertising, right? Yeah. So and marketing. And so I think and choosing which are the best bang for buck people to go for is a problem that Web2 understands inside out, right? And I think I want to see more of that over the next 5 years in crypto itself and being more quantitative about how to think about which users to incentivize and whatnot.
It does feel like the sophisticated teams, whether they're building L1s or apps, they are becoming a bit more intentional about this and designing for the sort of long-term behavior that they're trying to, like Monad, which launched a few weeks ago. I'm not an investor or anything, but like anecdotally, does seem like they were a bit like they went with a token sell. They did an airdrop, but it's like relatively constrained relative to previous sort of efforts. And
yeah, they had this like claiming mechanism.
Yeah, they had like a claiming mechanism.
It's pretty cute. I managed to claim some.
Oh, nice. You got one of the cards?
I got one of the cards.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know how much I have left. I've been holding, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think protocols are just getting smarter about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, if you own a blockchain protocol, like you run it, like how do you incentivize the right behavior at the right times, right? I think that's a fundamental question, right? So can you even do it without money, right? Like that's another
that's the golden ticket, right?
Thing.
If you can crack that, then you've built a $1 billion company.
Exactly that. So to me, or maybe when a lot of the existing non-crypto behaviors get moved on chain, then you can apply the same type of expertise. Oh, this person visited this website and that website, therefore he probably wants to see this other website. Do you see? Like it's a bit like I use these two dexes to trade these assets, and now this new asset is trending. He may or she may probably be interested in. So there's going to be a lot of that type of like systems being built in the future.
On this note, and one thing that I'd be curious your take on is on-chain reputation, which you just mentioned. Yep. I think people have been thinking about on-chain reputation for a long time. Yep. In the frame of like one area is like under collateralized credit, where if you can sort of know someone's reputation, you don't need this like fully collateralized lend borrow model that we currently have today in crypto. Practically speaking, that's really hard, like under collateralized lending for a lot of reasons. But I feel like no one's really cracked the on-chain reputation sort of thing. I'm not sure exactly what the cause is. Um, like ENS is maybe like one piece of the puzzle there, but I'm not sure. Is this something you've considered,
I
thought
mean, like a
about?
civil
Like,
score is kind of related to that, right? I think it's just a really big problem, and I think it needs to be tied to a specific use case, like a specific protocol. And I think it'll all be very custom first. I don't think there'll be this general score because, and I think it's a bit early for that.
right. It's like you could look at the Polymarket profiles or call sheet profiles is like one example of that, just on-chain
Yeah, I mean, we
reputation.
we saw
Yeah.
a lot of like some insider for what OpenAI's release date or something. Like only this person making like 19 out of 20 bets that were.
Right. Yeah.
So I feel like
That's one primitive of,
Yeah.
of reputation. Yeah.
I think a lot of it depends on what lens you're looking at
Right.
for the score. Yeah, if there are any lending companies like, yeah, hopefully I think they're all coming up again, right? So like those are the folks that working with, it's like, what does the score? What are you optimizing for, right? I think again it needs to be more custom, right? Like custom to that business's logic versus like some general like score. I mean, you can test with whether someone is like organic or inorganic. I think that's easier, right? But I think the
Holistic sort of reputation is just like it's hard.
Yeah.
It'll take time if ever. I guess the last question I have is, what's your long-term vision for Allium? I've seen a lot of crypto data companies over the years. A lot of them refer to like, I feel like all of them actually bring up like Bloomberg as like a North Star for good reason. It's like biggest data company. But curious, like how you think about it, sort of where you see it in 5 years, like looking back, what you guys were doing.
I think for Allium, there are gonna be two parts to that, right? So because I know that like my goal is that like every single team in crypto will have to use Allium, right? Because they have to either understand what's happening, operationalize that understanding, or productize something, right? And they need data for that. So I do know that every single team in crypto can use or should be using Allium, and also hopefully because we can do it cheaper, faster than most people, right? Or in-house teams. And that North Star is that it's going to be a combination of that Bloomberg metaphor that you use, and also more like a Databricks, right? So it's like Bloomberg and Databricks combined together, because not only do we process the data for a specific vertical like prediction markets or hyperliquid or lending or staking, right? We parse that data to make it high quality, but we also built this whole orchestration platform for people to work with the data. How do I do an audit report on top of the data every week, right? Like how do I build an app on top of the data? So there's this whole entire infrastructure element that it's one of those things where your typical finance person might think of as, oh, you're the Bloomberg of crypto, but then your developer would think of us as like, no, we are more like the Databricks or like Datadog, what have you not, right? That whole entire infrastructure operational layer as well. So it would be some combination of both, right? And I think that's that like it's two analogies into one, right? Yeah. Because we're a verticalized data and infrastructure company, right? So I think that's that piece that we want to become that operating system, right? That I'm sure maybe a lot of people use as well, but the data operating system for every single team within a organization.
Like you have these maybe two visions for Allium in the future. You could combine them somehow. Like, is that a very intentional thing where you can like see it clearly and that's informing what you're doing today in terms of the hires or the customers? Or are you more in the mindset of like, hey, let's just iterate sort of day by day, week by week, continue iterating the product. If we do that and get more customers, we will have more optionality on what we want to do and what this company looks like.
The reason I know why that will happen is because of the data gravity. Because the data is so huge that the workflows and the compute moves towards the data. The data doesn't go to the compute. You're not going to move like petabytes, gigabytes of data to your compute when your compute comes to the data, right? So, and because of that data gravity, like I know that like if we continue to execute, we will capture like we will be the place to be where a lot of these workflows will be built on top of, and that's where the operationalize verb comes into play, right? So, and I think we already see it because for a lot of different companies, we serve many different teams. with the same data delivered slightly differently, right? So and I think that you start to see that a lot more, and like why, and a lot of our customers, they want that single pane of glass across every part in the organization. The CFO sees the same thing as the product manager, who sees the same thing as the engineer in production, right? It's the same data after all, right? It's the blockchain. Why did they have 3 different systems built on one system?
Awesome. Well, Ethan, thank you for taking the time, and it was a pleasure chatting to you.